One of the longest running series on this channel is the Evolution series. It started out when I looked at the evolution of Search and Destroy, and we kind of expanded from there, looking at everything from weapons to characters, and today we are going back to our roots and once again looking at a game mode that has just recently this week come back to Black Ops 4, and that game mode would be, of course, Infected. Now, if you don't know what Infected is, essentially it's a fan favorite party game where one team is the humans and one team is the zombies, aka the infected. The humans fight to stay alive, but the zombies fight to kill the people just with melee weapons. And the key to this is that the zombies generally have some sort of perk or ability that makes it a little bit easier for them, whether that's moving extremely quickly or using tactical insertions or throwing knives. Generally, they have something to try to get the upper hand on the humans. And after a zombie kills a human, that human then becomes a zombie, so slowly that zombies or infected team gets larger and larger until none of the humans are left, or the humans survive till the end. Now, the very first evolution of this mode was in Modern Warfare 3 and has kind of expanded ever since. Now, for the sake of this video, we are only going to be looking at infected games that were put into the game by the developer. In other words, custom games do not count. In other words, Black Ops 2 did not have infected because in Black Ops 2, it was only in custom games. So this is only developer made infected. So, like I said, let's start out with Modern Warfare 3. Now, before we dive in, I just want to let you know about my Instagram. My Instagram is going to be the first link down in the description, and generally over there, sometimes I upload pictures from my real life, sometimes I just keep you updated on Call of Duty news. But if you want to look in behind the scenes of my life, my Instagram is a great place to look. So if you have Instagram, like I said, it'll be the first link down in the description, and hopefully you enjoy it over there. Now, let me shut up and let's talk about Infected. Now, for the sake of the video, not all the gameplay you're seeing is my gameplay because in some of the Call of Duty games, one, I couldn't find a game, or two, Infected wasn't available at the moment. So some of this gameplay isn't mine. The person who owns the gameplay, their channel will pop up on screen, and on top of that, I'll leave a link to their channel down in the description. So let's go to where this all began in Modern Warfare 3. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Infected did not start as a public match. It was actually a game mode that was only available in private match or custom games. People liked it so much that eventually on February 5th, 2012, Infected was added into public matches. So what were the intricacies of Infected in Modern Warfare 3? First of all, a lobby could be as large as 18 players, which was basically ground war in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. And the way it would work is you would spawn in, and for the first 9 seconds, everyone would be a survivor. After that 9 seconds, one of the survivors would get switched over to a zombie. Also, that first person that got switched over to a zombie also is allowed to use their weapon to get the first kill as a zombie. After that, it is all melee weapons. Now, as far as the zombies went, they had faster movement speed, they had a pistol with a tactical knife because that knifed faster than a normal knife. They also had a throwing knife and a tactical insertion. One thing you will see that's not in Black Ops 4 is a tactical insertion that is in most of the other games of Infected. That's being a zombie in a nutshell. However, being a survivor is a little bit different. As a survivor in Modern Warfare 3, essentially all you had to do was stay alive for 5 minutes. The game ended after 5 minutes, and the time limit would never get longer. Now, being a survivor, you would spawn in with a random weapon. Essentially, randomly in the pregame lobby, it would give everyone in that lobby a same weapon. In other words, there was no create a class, you couldn't choose a class, everyone had the exact same thing. On top of that, everyone had specialists. At 2 kills, you would get sleight of hand, which is of course very important in Infected. At 4 kills, you would get dead silence. At 6 kills, you would get steady aim. And then at 8, you would get the specialist bonus, which meant that you got every single perk in the game. This made it much easier to survive compared to not having any perks at all like we see in Black Ops 4. On top of that, by the way, when you did spawn in, every single person playing did have scavenger, which meant if you killed someone, you were able to pick up more ammo. Other than that, the only other thing to talk about regular Infected is the Moab. The Moab was one of the reasons why Infected became so popular, because in Modern Warfare 3, the easiest game mode to do so was Infected. All you had to do was get 25 kills without dying, which was easy when your enemies only had knives. So a lot of people played Infected to get the Moab. Unfortunately, in other games, there is nothing like this. Now, the other thing I have to mention is the other type of infected in Modern Warfare 3. This is the one that a lot of people forget about, and it's Juggernaut infected. Essentially what this is everyone spawns in with a Juggernaut suit, and the person who gets infected loses their Juggernaut suit, but gets a good weapon. Sometimes it's the Striker, the shotgun, sometimes it's another weapon altogether. The goal is to kill all the Juggernaut players and have them become infected without the Juggernaut suits. This is a type of infected that a lot of people forget about or just don't talk about. Now, the next game with Infected as a public match wasn't until Call of Duty Ghost, and Call of Duty Ghost basically just took Infected from Modern Warfare 3 and brought it forward into Ghost. It is extremely similar to what we saw before. One major difference is that if you were playing on PS3 or Xbox 360, you could only play with 12 players in a lobby. If you were playing on Xbox One, PC, or PlayStation 4, 18 people would be in the lobby. That is because Ground War was on the newer consoles, whereas Ground War was not on the older consoles. One new addition to this is that this game no longer only lasted 5 minutes. What happened is every time someone got newly infected, it would actually reset the timer back to 2 minutes. This essentially made it so that games always ended with everyone being infected, and very rarely did the survivors actually win. Once again, as a survivor, you got Specialist, but this time you got perks at 1, 3, 5, and then you got your full Specialist abilities, which is just all the perks at 7. This time, the perks included Quick Draw at 1, Reflex at 3, and Off the Grid at 5. And once again, at 7, you got every single perk in the game. So very similar to what we saw in Modern Warfare 3. Then being a zombie is exactly the same as before. You get Tac Insert, Throwing Knife, and you get to run a little bit faster with that knife. The other thing that returned in Ghost is a Chem Strike, which is basically the Moab from Modern Warfare 3, where if you went on a 25 kill streak, you would receive this and you would kill the entire lobby. Once again, this is why most people played Infected, because it was a good game mode to actually go for these. The next game to have Infected is Advanced Warfare, and this is an interesting one because this was the first Call of Duty game with 3D movement, and that meant that 3D movement was in Infected, and this completely changed the way the game was played. It was now easier for people to actually run away from the zombies than just to try to pull them down a corridor, and what this meant is that the best strategy at the end of the game was just to run around the map, having the zombies trail behind you. This was interesting. However, the thing that went in the wrong direction is that the survivors no longer had a specialist bonus, as there was no specialist streaks within Advanced Warfare. So because of that, there was no specialist within Infected. Now, moving to the zombies side of things, as far as the zombies goes, very similar to what we've seen before. Once again, the zombies do have the exoskeletons, so they could use the 3D movement as well, and there wasn't any throwing knife, but rather a spike drone that you could shoot out of your exoskeleton. Some people thought it was overpowered, and others thought they would rather have a combat axe, so it was kind of debated. You can let me know what you'd preferred down in the comments below. Now, aside from that, the other thing that's important is these lobbies were only 12-man lobbies. There was no 18-man infected lobbies in Advanced Warfare. On top of that, Advanced Warfare was the first game to implement the 30 streak instead of a 25 streak for a nuke. In this case, in Advanced Warfare, it was called a DNA bomb, which was once again you were able to get in Infected. The other thing I wanted to say is that up until this point, every single player who is a survivor has to use the same weapon. There is no create a class. There is no choosing a weapon in Infected, at least up until this point. Now, after this game, every single Call of Duty game would have Infected. The first of which is Black Ops 3, which is the very first Treyarch game to have Infected. Now, once again, this would be 12-man lobbies only, and this would be the first Infected that a lot of people didn't seem to like as much. And there was a couple reasons for that. First of all, as we know in Treyarch games, there's no DNA bomb, chem strike, tactical nuke, anything like that. So there was no bomb that could kill the whole lobby. Now, as you may or may not know, Black Ops 3 was released in 2015. However, Infected did not get added into the game until March 6, 2018, 3 years after the game was launched. A pretty insane update and a pretty large update for the game such a long time after release, but Infected was added. Now, this was also the very first Infected that would have create a class, or kind of have create a class. You would have to choose your class and which weapon you'd want to use. Before this, you were just given a weapon that the entire lobby had to use. Some people were for this, some people were against this. Now, on top of this, there was also no specialist score streaks, which meant that as you killed people, you didn't get any additional perks. Now, as far as the zombies go, in this game mode, all of the zombies would get the Nightbreaker, which was a DLC melee weapon that kind of looked zombies-ish. And on top of that, you would get a combat axe. Now, as far as perks go, to improve the zombies, they would get Afterburner, Overclock, Blast Suppressor, and Dead Silence. This basically allowed them to move a little bit quicker and a little more silently than the regular non-infected. On top of this, there was also specialist abilities in this mode as well. It was actually possible for the infected to get kinetic armor, psychosis, or active camo, and this would kind of help them in the long run try to get kills from the survivors. Now, a problem is, though, is that this game mode did not have tactical insertions, so sometimes it made running across the map a pretty big pain. After this, of course, is Infinite Warfare, and Infinite Warfare added some interesting changes to Infected. First of all, they went back to 18 people in a lobby, which I think is almost a standard, yet some games still do not do it. On top of that, the first infected had 2 minutes and 30 seconds to kill their first survivor, and every survivor that they killed would add 30 seconds to the clock, not 2 minutes like previous games. Now, another interesting thing about Infected in Infinite Warfare is when it was first released, there was only one primary weapon that people could use, the S-Ravage, or the pump shotgun. After an update, there was 2 other weapons added in, the FHR-40 and the R3K. But all in all, there was no pick a class, create a class, anything like that. There were just 3 possible weapons that you were able to use in Infected. Now, another nice thing about Infected in Infinite Warfare was the Deatomizer Strike. Once again, in Infinite Warfare, they brought back the tactical nuke, the 25 kill streak that would give you a deatomizer and literally kill the entire lobby, which, as I've mentioned throughout this video many times, people really like in Infected. Now, moving forward, the next part we have to look at is, of course, the zombie side of things. So once you get infected in this game, all of the infected turn into Synaptic, which is, of course, like the robot character in multiplayer in Infinite Warfare. And as far as the rest of the zombies or infected go, it's pretty much the same that we've seen in every single game. You get a throwing knife, you get a tactical insertion, and that is pretty much it. You also get to move a little bit quicker than the other players, but really, that's all. Now, the next game, Call of Duty World War II, made some pretty big changes and one leap forward that I think will change Infected forever. So Infected was added to Call of Duty World War II during the Attack of the Undead, which was basically a zombies event in multiplayer during Call of Duty World War II. And the biggest difference with this game mode was that the infected were actual zombies. This is the very first Infected game where the infected actually became zombies. Now, on top of that, this mode actually made it very possible for the survivors to win, as every time someone got infected, it only added 10 seconds to the clock, and the starting timer was only 2 minutes. So this game in World War II was very possible for the survivors to win. Now, there were no perks or specialist streaks that you could get like previous games, but the things that you did get included a Type 100, a combat shotgun, 2 S-Mine 44s, which were basically bouncing Bettys, and a Mark V gas grenade, which was definitely enough equipment to keep you alive throughout those 2 minutes plus that we talked about before. Now, on top of this was the first Infected mode where care packages would randomly drop in throughout the map and the survivors could pick them up. And inside, there could be flamethrowers or even a V2 rocket, which could kill the entire lobby of zombies. Now, on top of this, you could also earn a V2 rocket the proper way by getting 25 kills without dying. Now, the infected, like I said before, became zombies in this game and ran around with an axe, and on top of that, they had a tactical insertion that was a zombie skull that they could place on the ground and respawn there. Now, the really cool thing about this mode is this is the only infected game mode to not have a throwing knife or a combat axe, which did make it a little bit more difficult for the zombies, but to make up for this, the zombies moved incredibly quickly. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Infected in Call of Duty World War II. And finally, we have Black Ops 4. Now, this of course just came out on Tuesday, so it is possible that they do make some changes to it. However, looking back on it, I'm not going to go through and talk about all the intricacies of it, because either one, you could just go play it right now, or you can check out my video from earlier this week. But what I thought would be better is simply comparing it to the other games that we've talked about so far. And essentially, what I can see from comparing it to all the other games is that the Black Ops 4 version of Infected is essentially the bare bones version of Infected. So first of all, when you spawn in, you are able to pick from several different classes, but only a couple of them actually have Scavenger, which is a very important perk in Infected because you're trying to stay alive for as long as possible. Now, on top of this, when you spawn in as a zombie, there is no tactical insertion, and really the only thing you have to help you is a combat axe. Now, the combat axe is pretty good and pretty easy to get kills with, but still, on top of that, when you're playing as a survivor, there's no specialist streaks like we saw before, and nothing like a V2 rocket, tactical nuke, or anything like that. Now, once again, in this game mode, you do get to play as a zombie, either John Doe or Jane Doe, once you get infected, but it is impossible, or nearly impossible, for the survivors to actually win. And the reasoning for that is because every single time one of the infected kills a survivor, it resets the timer to 3 minutes, which means you have a ton of time to kill everyone. So the infected literally always win. But that is Infected in Black Ops 4. Like I said, it really is just a bare bones version of Infected, and I'm curious what you think. What is your favorite version of Infected? Out of all of the Call of Duty games we've looked at throughout this video, which Infected is your favorite? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. And if you like what you see here and want to stay up to date on all my videos, the best way to do so is make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you have notifications turned on. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this to us.